Give us free. Give us free.
Your Honor, please instruct the defendant that he cannot disrupt these proceedings with such outbursts.
Give us free. Give us free.
If we are to have any semblance of order in this country,
Give us free.
Peace, unity, and welcome my conscious and unconscious family and friends. This is the all-new BlackVillage Community Podcast, and I am truly your host of the show, JC, aka Afro Black, dropping nothing but the raw and uncut. Without any fear, as I use my mic as a spear to chucker you with liberated truth. I am your host and your native soldier in the struggle. My purpose and mission for this show is first to enlighten, inform, and engage. And I want to engage with all who claim to know the truth. All truth seekers and my native family, I welcome you. This show is dedicated to all our indigenous native ancestors and to all those who've carried the mantle of truth, and to every person with the ability to throw off the chains of comfortable habit and unwarranted assumption and move in a new, liberated direction that is guided by truth and observational evidence, no matter where that direction may lead you. My main objective and purpose here is freedom, mind, soul, and spirit. That being said, welcome to the BlackVillage Community Podcast, and much love from our great universal goddess and mother of all living here and above.
DC in the house.
I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth. Truth.
Aboriginal people, Aboriginal people, Aboriginal people, Aboriginal people, Aboriginal people, Aboriginal people, Aboriginal people.
Aboriginal means the original inhabitant of a land from the earliest times. The ancient mound builders that built and designed the pyramids right here, not just by the Nile, contrary to popular belief in denial. Pyramids and huge hieroglyphics and pictographs on the ground are all mounds found around the Americas, north, central, and south, even Venus and Mars. That is documented fact that emanates from my mouth. So who exactly were these Aboriginals here, whose ancient evidence of residency is hesitantly mentioned in this hemisphere? Were they the stereotypical Native American so-called Red Indians? Well then, let's be clear, ask any of their tribe if they're sincere. They'll tell ya, those mounds predate their origins. Our past was erased and replaced with lies. Our achievements and identity plagiarized. We got amnesia of who we are, but we go way back further than the seats in your car.
Aboriginal people, 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 Aboriginal people.
Hey, this is JC, aka Afro Black, and I am here with you for another Indigenous Sunday to enjoy and to share and to drop nothing but the raw and uncut. That's what I do here on the Black Village Community Podcast. And I am JC, a.k.a. Afro Black, here to share some more indigenous Aboriginal truth for the so-called black community. You feel me? Here to drop the raw and uncut. That's what I love to do. That's what I verbrate. That's what I communicate. And that's what I do all the time. You feel me? That's what I love to do. So before I get things a little bit going, let me change my theme music to something a little bit more, communal, might I say. Something that I love to listen to. Let me play a little bit of this right here. Oh. There you go, some Tupac in the backdrop. And this is JC. You've joined, if you're listening in, if you're tuned in, if you just happen to run into the Black Village Community Podcast, you've joined me here, JC, aka Afro Black, here with some new information, and not only new information, but a continuation from the week before last, because I had some issues. I wasn't able to make it in last week. I had a browser hijack go on. My browser got hijacked. Had some things going on. It wasn't communicating. Software wasn't communicating. Some technical issues within that issue. But I got it straightened out, people. And I am here, you feel me, to verbrate. You feel me, to communicate and to share with the indigenous Aboriginal community and the so-called black community, those out there who don't know who they are, those who think they know who they are, and even those who know who they are. You feel me? I'm here just to communicate, to come together like a community. You feel me? To commune with my people like a tribe. You feel me? That's what I want to do, and that's what I love to do. So in the process of that, a lot of times information don't always feel good. It hurts us. You feel me? Sometimes it don't feel good to us, but it's still necessary for us to share, to communicate, and to learn and to grow as a people. You feel me? And that's what I like to do here on the Black Village. And if you want to join me here on the Black Village, if you want to come in, if you want to drop in, if you just want to listen in, you can chime in. It doesn't cost you a dime, just a bit of your conscious time to join me here at the Conscious Table of Truth on the Black Village, live here on Spreaker. It doesn't cost you a dime. Just chime in at 857-232-0155. Again, that is area code 857-232-0155. And you're going to need that conference key to get through the conference door to sit down with me at the Conscious Table of Truth. That is 947595. That conference code again is 947595. So today's podcast is a part 2 from the week before last, a subject matter that is sensitive for some and not sensitive for others. Because, I'm a truth seeker. That podcast topic is, and I quote, Why Bill Cosby's Rise and Fall Hurt Black America, Part 2. Subtitle, You Can't Handle the Truth. Again, Why Bill Cosby's Rise and Fall Hurt Black America, Part 2. Subtitled, You Can't Handle the Truth. And so today I got a presentation. My queen is with me. She hasn't been on the show in a very long time. So let me present my partner, my queen, my love, my everything. Go ahead, queen, chime in.
Hello, my beautiful people.
Okay, so I'm glad she died now. My queen didn't want to originally join me because this is a topic matter that is not really of her interest. You feel me? And this is what she was sharing with me. So, queen, talking about Bill Cosby, this is not your cup of tea, but you were willing to come and share and to verbrate and to communicate with me anyway, and those who are listening. Go ahead and share your issue or why you didn't care too much to join the show specifically about Bill Cosby. Go ahead, queen.
I don't like Bill Cosby. Never have, never will.
Well, can you be a little bit more specific about why you don't like Bill Cosby?
Generally speaking, not really. I never really cared for the Cosby Show. Didn't watch it much growing up. Thought it was, too, I don't know.
Well, okay. Well, you know what?
Entertainment. Wasn't really entertaining to me. I never cared for it. I don't know. I don't like watching phony people look phony on TV.
Basically, you felt like he was not being realistic, not a realistic representation of so-called black people and the black community. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't think he made a good representation of actual families, period. I didn't know any family like that growing up.
Well, and to be raw and uncut about it, due to the fact that you are of biracial descent, you spent the majority of your life, or at least a lot of your life, with your white family. So you're saying that he didn't even, in your opinion, even come, in a relation to white families in there? I mean, because according to a lot of white people, they could relate to him.
Maybe because they had money.
Okay. Well, see, you know what? That's a subject matter, and I'm glad you brought that up. And so let me get into the meat of what we're going to talk about. Because the week before last, I played an audio cast by, which was an interview of Cornel West, basically talking about his new book at the time that was, I believe, was called Prophetic Prophecy. But in the book, he exposes the black elite for who they are, what they are, and what they represent. And if you listen to the interview, it appears to me, and not only appears, just to be raw and uncut, he is saying that the elite stagnates and hurt the black, and they're disconnected. They're disconnected. They disconnected from the black community. They've never had a connection. They don't want to really be connected to the black community, and they stigmatize the growth of the black community with this elite attitude that they have. For me to add my perspective to what Cornel West is saying or was saying, because I'm gonna replay just a clip for anybody who did not hear it, just to add to it. In my conscious opinion, they hurt the black community and stigmatize the black community with this elitist attitude, because the elitist attitude is an attitude of cultural genocide. It's an attitude of a cultural assimilation, basically making black folks not care about their culture, not care about their heritage, not care about what their ancestors accomplished, achieved, or even put forth or set forth for them to embrace as a culture and a tradition, but to abandon those concepts and to embrace a Eurocentric ideology of what a black American is supposed to look like, act like, behave, and even when it comes to education. Would you agree, Queen?
Yeah.
And so on that note, let me play this. Let me get this thing going, and I'm gonna play this little excerpt with Cornel West to get things started that speaks to what I'm talking about, and I shall return right after this.
What took the place of collective fight back was individual upward mobility. So that what was once in place, much more stronger moral conviction, we saw ruthless ambition. So you look at the formation of the black professional class, doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, professors, politicians across the board. They have much less fire. Why? Because they're much more tied to ruthless ambition than they are to moral conviction. They're much less tied to a we consciousness as opposed to just an I consciousness concerned about upward mobility. There's always going to be some prophetic professionals, but it's a small slice, and it is not connected to the energies of black poor people. It's completely severed.
And there you go. That's just an example. That's just an excerpt. I actually played a nice chunk of that clip that was much longer than that gave more information. But I didn't want to go over the entire clip that I played the week before last. And the reason why is because I got some information that I want to share. I got some information I want to continue to explain my position on the fact that Bill Cosby was raised an elitist. Most people don't know. And some people do know. If they do know, they don't know a whole lot about the place that Bill Cosby claimed he was born and raised at. Bill Cosby, his claim to fame of where he was raised and born in Philly, was in Germantown, Philly. Now, if you go do research on Germantown, Philly, which I did do some research on Germantown, Philly. I don't want to get too much into it right now because I got some other things that I want to play. Matter of fact, I might just pull up the article and read it. But Germantown, Philly was predominantly a white town at one time. Today, if you go to Germantown, Philly, which has a number of communities within that town, okay? If you go to Germantown today, it's full of black folks. But in the 1950s, 1940s, it was predominantly a white area. Now, if you go do research on it, they claim that it was of white and mixed descent, but it also claims that it was an upper middle class community during those times of the 1940s, 1950s, and even into the early 60s. Now, this is where Bill Cosby was born and raised. Matter of fact, let me just pull up some information. Let me pull up this information on. Let me pull this up right quick. I should already had this up on. Let me just read this right quick. On Germantown, Philadelphia, where Bill Cosby was born and raised. A lot of people don't know about that place. A lot of people don't know about Germantown. Let me see. I got it right here. The article is called "My Hometown, Germantown, Philadelphia, Died in the 1960s. Salisbury, North Carolina is noise for diving down into the same trail." Okay, now, no, is this the article I wanted to read? I don't think this is the article right here. Okay, look, it says as a teenager in the mid 60s, this is from the article. Anybody can go pick up this article. It's by Rowan Free Press. This is an independent media outlet. Rowan Free Press, the independent voice of Rowan County in Salisbury, North Carolina. That's where this article is from. The title of the article is titled "My Hometown, Germantown, Philadelphia, Died in the 1960s." So let me read an excerpt from here. It says, as a teenager in the mid-1960s, I heard the death rattle of my hometown, Germantown, a.k.a. G-Town, a real historic neighborhood in Philadelphia. Germantown in the 50s to the early 60s was a mixed white, black neighborhood made up of educated, middle, upper class, home working people. Did you hear that, people? This is the community Bill Cosby was raised in. And it says Germantown in the 50s and early 60s was a mixed white and black neighborhood made up of educated, middle, upper class, income working people. It was an outstanding place to grow up at least until the early 60s, when two turning points in Germantown occurred. The first was planting high-risk public housing developments in Germantown, bringing large pockets of poverty, gangs, drugs, crime, aka black people, to the neighborhood from North Philly. Also at work were greedy real estate brokers who practiced blockbusting, an approach to acquiring real estate cheap by spreading rumors that ghetto folks from the North Phillies were moving next door. So basically they caused white flight. But if you listen to what he said, now Bill Cosby grew up in this neighborhood from the 1930s, 1940s, and the 1950s. And if you heard it, it said it was a place for upper middle class people, working class people who lived there. And if it said that it was a mixed place of white and black in the 1940s and the 1950s, well, if white people lived in this area and it was an upper middle class community, how many black people do you really think lived in Germantown then? At that time point in that period in the 1940s and the 1950s, how many so-called black Americans you actually believe, or anybody actually believed, for it to say Germantown in the 1950s and the early 60s was a mixed white and black neighborhood made up of educated, middle, upper class, income working people? I would suggest it right now, that it was a majority white community with some speckles of black people who lived within that community, rather if they worked there or lived there. But my point being is this: Bill Cosby never grew up in poverty. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. The point I'm trying to drive here is that Bill Cosby never lived in a poor community, never knew what it was like to live in a poor community, never knew what it was to even relate to so-called black people during the 1940s, 50s, and 60s in any way. And this is the reason why Bill Cosby does not have a resume or even a career of showing any interest in helping so-called black people in America. He's done nothing. He's done zero. When you look at his philanthropy, he's only given to universities. So most people don't want to see the truth in that area, but that is the truth about Bill Cosby. But you know what? You also see the truth about who Bill Cosby is as an elitist, as a conformist and a pacifist. You also see that when you listen or even pay attention to his show. It appears to me, and Queen, you're listening to this, I'd like to know your input on this, what I'm going to say right now. It appears to me that Hollywood and those behind the scenes within the entertainment industry use Bill Cosby as an image to forward an agenda. And that agenda was cultural genocide and assimilation, to further the amnesia that the so-called black community is still experiencing, still going through, to the degree that most so-called black people are too concerned. They're too worried about surviving, too worried and concerned about living, too worried and concerned about their relationships. And regardless if those relationships are personal relationships with a man, a woman, their children, or relatives, so-called black folks are going through too much turmoil in their own personal lives, at the same time trying to pay the bills and survive and feed themselves, to be concerned about their culture. And as a result of that, you got them admiring people like Bill Cosby, like Michael Jordan, like people with money, like Lil Wayne and the rest of these Negroes who are cultural killers, culture killers. They're killing their own culture because they don't give a damn about the truth of their own culture. And in the process, they get fed an assimilation process of the African American story, African American experience, the so-called black experience, which all leads to this artificial construct of an African identity. And Bill Cosby perpetuated that, promoted that, and was in my opinion, he was a poster boy for that image. What do you think, Queen?
I think he was the beginning point of making sure there were conformists amongst the black community in Hollywood. Was it during your research when you came across the video of Bill doing a quote unquote black history video? And he made comparisons to black folks and the Native Americans and then turned around and called them Africans. So that looked like a whole lot to me of him making sure we disconnect ourselves from where we are from to what the white agenda was.
I would have to agree with that. I would definitely have to agree with that, and I'm gonna play some of that as well in probably next week, because I'm going to lead this podcast into a third podcast because I'm going to show that Bill Cosby hated poor black people. This man was never for the so-called black community. He was for the elite. He was for the group that we don't even live next door to. He was for the group that goes to school with white folks, private schools, who those black elite people who live next door to Trump. If there's a black person living in the community of Trump's community, that would be somebody like Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby represented a community that disconnected itself from his own family, his own indigenous family, years ago during European colonization, when these people who sold out their brothers and sisters and was willing to hurt their own people to further the agenda of European colonization in this country. Bill Cosby represent those traitors, those house Negroes, those house Negro Indians. So let me continue to say, look, to point out, to really further, because I can sit here and talk about this, but to prove this is another thing. Let me prove this. Now look at the time when they brought Bill Cosby. They brought Bill Cosby in during the 80s. In the early 80s is when his show came on, okay? And his show was a hit show. Let me see. Queen, I would love for you to pull up, if you have, the article, Blackness, Blackish, and the Cosby Show, how Cliff Huxtable changed American culture. I'd like to read from that. But before I read from that, let me play this. I want to play an excerpt from Good Times. Okay, I'm going to play this excerpt from Good Times because to me it shows Good Times came from, it was a show, it was a hit show in the 70s. It was, and amongst all the black shows, it was number 2 under Sanford and Son. Sanford and Son being the number 1 hit show at one time in the 70s. Now, Good Times, in my opinion, showed more value, more principles It showed more the normality of the majority of so-called black people, the way they lived, how they operated when it came to a father and a mother living together, making that family work, struggling together, pushing their children to get an education, to do their best and to be their best. And they got rid of their father, killed him off, I believe, around the episode in the year 1974 is when they took him off the show. But let me play this, and to me, this is where Cliff Huxtable, Bill Cosby's character, Cliff Huxtable, never represented black people, not the reality of who we are as a people, even when it comes to our aspirations and aspiring to be better. You feel me? His show shows a serious disconnection of the elite, and his show is an example of that. So let me play this, and I shall return right after this excerpt of this clip from Good Times.
Michael, why don't you come over to my house and look at television for a while, huh?
Oh, why?
Because this discussion ain't for no little boys.
I ain't no little boy, Daddy. I'm 12 years old.
You want to make 13?
Come on, Willona.
What's up waiting in that line? We can do that at home free of charge.
I guess you're right. But the kid's gonna be so disappointed.
Well,
JJ!
Mom, Dad, I thought y'all went to the movies. We was, but we changed our mind. What's going on here?
Well, what you doing dressed like this? And Tyrone, Sylvester, why are you holding him?
Well, like I told you, Mom, I'm going to this dance, and these are my escorts.
So y'all turn him loose.
Hey, man, get out of the way. We got business with the warlords.
Boy, I don't give a damn who you got business with. My son ain't going to no gang fight. Junior, what the hell you doing getting mixed up with a gang?
JJ, you're in a gang?
No, Ma, they chose me. I didn't choose them.
I told y'all not turn him loose.
And I told you to get on, old man.
Who do you think you're talking to that way?
I'm Mad Dog, dig it. Head of Satan's Night's War Council.
Is that supposed to be something big?
You heard what I said.
Mad Dog, you don't get your hand off my wife's face, I'm gonna slap a muzzle on you.
There you go. To me, that was an example. That was a true example of a father figure and a true example of a situation of a black man, a so-called black man. Like I say, I use the term so-called because the term black is not an ethnicity. The term black does not tell anybody who you are. It's an artificial construct. So, as I was saying, and to me, when you look at, let me play this Bill Cosby one right quick. I'm going to play this Bill Cosby because to me, Bill Cosby, his show made people laugh. But when you really pay attention to the Bill Cosby show, the question is, what type of was these principles that really related to the so-called black community, or were they trying to get us to assimilate, to continue the cultural genocide that they want done in the so-called black community, to make us to forget who our grandparents are, our great-grandparents, the traditions of their cultural identity? We should have you know what? The one thing that we did not do that we should have did as a people, anybody who know their grandparents and their mother is indigenous should have furthered their research, further bringing culture back into the community. But you know what? They made sure that indigenous culture did not come into the so-called black community. They wanted us to not indulge in that, not embrace that, not remember that, not cultivate what our grandparents passed down to us. And you know what? For the most part, it appeared that it worked, but it didn't work. Because I'm one of the ones who know who I am. I embrace who my grandmother is, who my grandfather is, who my mother is, and who my father is. They are Cherokee. They are American Aboriginal Indigenous Indians. And we got to embrace that as a people. Bill Cosby was also working with the white man to continue cultural genocide and Eurocentric assimilation. So let me prove that by playing this clip right here with Bill on it. Let me play this right here. I just got to playing the Evans. Now, even though I will say Good Times wasn't perpetuating for us to embrace our American Aboriginal identity, but it wasn't taking from it either. You had a struggling family that was trying to get their children not to repeat what they were living in, which was in a state of poverty. And that's understood that, you know, us as a people, that we don't want to be living in poverty. But at the same time, we should learn from our experiences, learn from our parents' experiences, learn from our grandparents' experiences and their losses, and what they didn't learn from and what they should have learned should make us a better people and make us better overall as a people. And the one thing that our grandparents allowed the white man to perpetuate in them was a sense of fear. That not only fear of white people, but fear of expressing who they really are and sharing their identity and their culture with their children. So let me play this right quick, and I shall return.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Daddy said you called the apartment?
Yes, son. You left a load of clothes in the washing machine.
Oh, yeah, I know. I had to run out for class, so I couldn't finish it.
Yeah, we did it for you.
Hey, thanks.
Now, you didn't mix any of our clothes in with yours, did you?
No.
And you're not doing other people's laundry for them, are you?
Nah.
Well, we have some things here from your wash that we think you'd like to see.
Yeah. Now, is this yours? and is this yours? And this is not yours. I hope.
These are Justine's.
Son, where are you currently residing?
You mean, where do I receive my mail?
No, I mean, where do you live?
At the moment, I'm in transition.
Could you make a transition from there over to here and then make another transition where you tell us each month I give you a check to pay the rent on your apartment? Are you using that check now to pay the rent at Justine's?
Oh, well, not all of it. Justine's rent is much lower.
So what are you doing with the leftover money?
I opened up a bank account.
What about the bed and the refrigerator that we bought you?
Well, I'm renting those to Anthony.
And you're taking all that money and putting it in your bank account?
Yeah.
So you're really saving a lot of money.
Yep.
Theo, we sent you to college to get an education, son, not to move in with your girlfriend. And the money that we give you is for rent for an apartment that you're supposed to be living in with a couple of guys named Danny and Glenn. That's where we expect you to study, to eat, and to live.
Mom, it's not like I'm living with a stranger.
We sent you to college to get an education, not move in with your girlfriend.
You know, just because you guys give me money doesn't mean you can control my life. You know, if you guys aren't going to get behind us on this, then Justine and I will just have to figure out a way to do it on our own and live our own lives.
He told you.
There you go right there. Now, look, I'm going to tell you something about that excerpt. And, Queen, I want to hear your comment on it. To me, I don't know any black family, and I'm one of them, and I have my oldest son finished college. Queen, go ahead and correct me. I believe it was about a year ago, the year before last. Year before last, he finished college, I believe. Well, he didn't finish. He's going to continue his education, but he got his BA at the University of Merced, my oldest son. And ain't nowhere in the world I would pay my son's rent. I'm going to say it again. Bill Cosby was promoting a family and a lifestyle that was Eurocentric. It was not us. It was not the so-called black community. If I had the money, I wouldn't be paying my son's rent. They bought his bed, they bought his refrigerator. Now I can see your son in college and he's in the dorm, so he needs a refrigerator. You buy him a little refrigerator. I don't know about bed. I guess they bought him a bed. I've never heard of having to buy a bed. I thought dorms and colleges came with beds. The only thing you had to provide was your own clothes and your blankets and your sheets and stuff like that. But they bought him a bed. They bought him a refrigerator. I'm pretty sure television included and all that, according to this show, this episode I just got them playing. And they paying his rent. He turns around, take the rent money that his parents was giving him, and was moved in with his girlfriend and was using it to store it up in his bank account. Like I say, even his comment and his reaction to his parents appeared to me something that a white kid would say. Go ahead, comment queen. I'd like to hear your comments on this one.
As far as my reality and growing up, that's, what rich white folks would do for their kids, help them pretty much buy their way, through everything, pay for everything, and then get mad when they don't do what they want them to do. It's basically using money to control them. And that's how they react in this world, period, is they still use money as a form of control.
Exactly. They still use to this day. They use money. They use wealth. They use financial power to control their families, control their children. And this was what Bill Cosby was promoting. He was promoting this. Now, my son went to college, got his degree, didn't want to live on the campus, got him a job to pay for his room and board in a house with I think 3 other guys. It was a 4-bedroom house. My son didn't want to live on it. Now, he could have lived on the campus. He still would have had to pay a lot of his own way. And so the tuition would have paid as much as probably the tuition would have paid not only for the fees for him to be at the school, but also would have covered so much of the dorm as well, what it cost, the cost of the dorm. But he still would have had to work to pay the rest of his way. But my son paid his way. He worked hard. Is that not true, Clint? Our son worked hard to work his way through school, huh?
He still works hard, and he still plans on continuing his education.
So, looking at Bill Cosby, like I say, he's promoting an image of Eurocentric assimilation. He always was doing that. Nobody paid attention to it, and that's because a lot of these Negroes today, it's almost like a normality to be a house Negro. In my opinion, a lot of black people, a lot of so-called black people are raising children, raising their male kids, raising their female children to be house Negroes, like it's a normality. Like the word house Negro don't even exist no more. Just get in wherever the white man tells you to fit in until he pisses you off. That's wrong. When in all reality, what Bill Cosby should have been perpetuating, no matter how subtle he could have did it on his show, he should have been perpetuating our true culture as American Aborigines. He should have been perpetuating for us to aspire to get an education, to have our own businesses, to help our people, to help our communities, to rebuild our communities, not to go live in a white community and settle in and just live there and be a part of the community and take care of your kids like a good old house nigga or like emulating a white family. That's exactly what Bill Cosby was doing, emulating a white family. And that's the exact ideology that the black elitists continues to perpetuate in this country. All them house Negroes at them elite colleges, at them so-called Messianic meetings that they be doing, at them so-called black people with Greek fraternity names, emulating white people rather than being who they are and embracing that they're American Aborigines and that they are American Indians, and that's who their grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents are and were. That's my perspective. You feel me, Queen? And
I feel you.
And I'm gonna be honest, I'm being real nice today because you on the show. Because normally I'd be cussing and talking crazy and saying, just being me. But I gotta bring it clean because you on the show. I also had a brother, earlier before the show, get at me about my language. JC, you need to tone it down a little bit. I'm like, man, what the hell, man? I'm just being myself, man. No, you got to turn that down a little bit, bro. You got to be a little, come on, man. You can still be you. I'm like, okay, I'll take it with a grain of salt, my brother. Take it with a grain of salt. But
I agree.
Hey, but you know what? Continuing the topic here, why Bill Cosby's rise and fall hurt black America. And when I say black America, I'm talking about the part of black America I don't agree with because I'm not black. So, but I said it before. The week before last, I was dropping the raw and uncut, sharing the fact that when you look at the image, when you look at the character, when you look at the Hollywood persona that we know of with the name Bill Cosby, there's actually 3 personalities there. I personally believe there were 3 Bill Cosby personas wrapped into one man. There was the famous, successful comedic entertainer, actor, author, lecturer, voice for the black elite Bill Cosby. This Bill Cosby is the elitist, conservative, arrogant, bourgeois Bill who truly hate poor, uneducated, so-called black Americans. Then there's the Hollywood-created, famous, fictional father figure Cliff Huxtable, a.k.a. Bill Cosby, most wholeheartedly and faithfully believe was the real Bill, but was only a television persona, okay? And then there's just the feeble, perverted, broken, spirited, now sickly, blinded, and sellout American Indian black man Bill Cosby, who was convicted and now sentenced to prison for perverted, predatory criminal behavior and assault on women, okay? People need to wake the hell up. Negroes need to wake the hell up. But today I want to establish the fact that Bill Cosby was a house Negro elitist with an agenda that was for the so-called average black American, not to mention the poor. In other words, in my conscious opinion, Bill didn't give a damn about the so-called black community unless it was sustaining and building the interest of the upper middle wealthy black elite community, financial's interest. Well, that's what the Bill Cosby show is all about. Who you think made all that money? White folks and elite Negroes benefited from the Bill Cosby show because that show made a lot of money. Bill Cosby, all the way up until his sentencing in prison, you know how much money that Negro was making? Now, somebody might say, that's none of your business what he was making. He earned that money. I agree. He did earn that money. White man paid that Negro hella good. The last time it was estimated that he was worth $400 million a year. He was making over $400 million a year. My point is this. He took a nice bulk of his money when he gave to charity interest. He gave to colleges. He did nothing for the black community in Philly. He did nothing for the poor so-called black community in Philly. He didn't build no programs. He did not restart or even financially back any programs to help anybody in any way. So what does that show me? And this Negro is about, 79, 80 years old? That he was a selfish, self-centered Negro. Now you might say, well, he helped a lot of people's careers. He helped people's careers who were already middle and upper class people. Bill did nothing for nobody who couldn't do nothing for themselves. I'm going to say it again. Bill did nothing for no one who could not do for themselves. Now, you got some people out there that promote that ideology. Don't do for nobody who won't do for themselves. No, don't do for nobody who don't want to do a damn thing for themselves. But there's a lot of people out here, a lot of so-called black folks out here who want to do and ain't got a damn thing to do a damn thing with. We live in America, people. You got to have something to start something. You got to have something to start something. Bill Cosby got his way into Hollywood because some white devil opened the door for him. I'm going to prove that. In my part 3 of talking about this, I'm going to continue this into a part 3. And when I continue this into a part 3, next week, I'm going to prove that Bill Cosby hate poor, uneducated black people. Now, you got some people out there saying, well, the niggas uneducated. Wait a minute. Educated with what? What the hell is education when you think about the details of what education is? What the hell is education? What are you being educated with? Because when you talk about education, the question is, when you get down to the point of what is education, it's about what you're being educated with. What are you being educated with? Well, to live in this white man's society, to live in this white man's system, to live in what is called the American system, or under the American government, within the system and the different categories within this system that makes the system what it is, from the educational system to the state government, county governments, federal governments, to the private sector, starting a business in the private sector, working for the private sector. All these segments within this society was put together, orchestrated by the white man. had nothing to do with me, my grandparents or great-grandparents, or even yours, most likely. The majority of the people out there who are listening to this broadcast, from white folks to so-called black people, most likely your family had nothing to do with it. Now you be saying, well, you can contribute to that and you can make changes with that. There's a whole lot within the system that's not changing, will not change. And President Barack Obama, was the face and an example of an unchanging system, because that Negro had the presidency for 8 years, and what the hell did he do? What did he do to make things better for those impoverished in this country? What did he do for those who are considered below the economic and financial scale in this country? He raised the money for at the end of the year earned income credit for poor black people? Well, he opened the door so that the state government can hire more people to work for the franchise tax board? Is that what you're talking about? My point is this: what opportunities and what doors did he open for those living in South Central, living in the poor communities in Philly, the poor communities in Detroit, the poor communities in Chicago, the poor communities in New York and in Jersey? The black and brown, the so-called black and brown people who are living at the bottom of the totem pole. And you got people coming in this country from other countries that are doing better and getting better treatment from this government than those who actually built this government and built this country to where it is today. Bill Cosby didn't give a damn about so-called black people. Wake the hell up. Negroes need to stop immortalizing this Negro. He didn't get enough time, in my opinion. I'm going to be real with you. He didn't get enough jail time. They were being nice by giving him 10 years, considering the fact of his age. So, to continue my verbiage on Bill Cosby, I wanted to read this from this book that I read from last year. And let me see what is the name of the book that I wanted to read from, which is The Aristocrats of Color, South and North, the Black Elite, from 1880 to 1920. That's what I want to read from. I'm pretty sure you don't have a copy of that, right, Queen? So I'm going to have to read this myself. Okay. Now. No,
I don't have access to it.
Now I want to read this, and the reason why I want to read this, like I said, now this part of this article this book that I'm reading from, which is a very old book, okay. And again, the title of this book that I'm reading is called "Aristocrats of Color, South and North, the Black Elite," from 1880 to 1920 by Willard B. Gatewood Jr. Again, that's by Willard B. Gatewood Jr. Okay. So this is the book I'm reading from, and I'm reading page 7, and this is about the black elite. Okay, it says, so complex were the kinship ties among these families that one observer in 1902 claimed that anyone attempting to do a genealogical chart was certain to wind up in St. Elizabeth's Hospital. In time, their circle, the elite, became to include members of the old families who migrated to Washington, and because of opportunities, education, and employment, so many of Washington blacks, 400, married into the upper class families from elsewhere or were related by blood to such people that the city became the family's axis of national aristocracy. Described as Negro aristocrats in all its glory, the Washington group prided itself on being reserved, sedate, cultured, clever, as well as gracious and hospitable towards those from elsewhere who occupied a comparable social status. In all cities with a sizable black population, according to James Weldon Johnson, there existed similar social groups that extended and interchange of privileges to others like those according to a member, in good standing and going from one fraternal lodge to another. Linked by ties of kinship, aristocrats of color constituted a nationwide network of social and familial relationships. They exchanged visits, toured Europe, and vacationed together in Harper's Ferry, Highland Beach in Maryland, and New Jersey coast, Saratoga, and in Benton Harbor, and Idlewild in Michigan. Debutante balls, weddings, and other important social events in one city attracted black aristocrats from around the area and even distant places. People, I'm end quote on me reading. This is an example that these people want to be like white people. Black elite want to be like white people. Did you just hear what I was just reading? Let me read that again. Described as Negro aristocracy in all its glory, the Washington group prided itself on being reserved and sedate, cultured and clever, as well as gracious and hospitable towards those elsewhere who are occupied a comparable social status. In all cities with a sizable black population, according to James Weldon Johnson, there existed similar social groups that extended an interchange of privileges to each other, like those according to a member in good standing and going from one fraternal lodge to another, linked by ties of kinship and familial relationships. They exchanged wide networks of They exchanged visits, toured Europe, and vacationed together at Harper's Ferry, Highland Beach in Maryland, New Jersey coast, Saratoga, and Benton Harbor, and Idlewild in Michigan. Debutante balls, weddings, and other important social events in one city attracted aristocrats from the surrounding area and even distant places, forming a tightly closed group that outsiders found difficult but not impossible to penetrate. Aristocrats of color attracted extraordinary importance to family and heritage. Aristocrats of color attached extraordinary importance to family name and heritage. They showed great pride in the status of achievements of ancestors, especially who had been well-to-do free people of color and those who had been leaders in civic and religious affairs. The Underground Railroad and the abolitionist movement and the nations of war, they manifested as keen interest in history and pioneered the establishment of organizations dedicated to the study and preservation of the Afro-American past. Enamored of royalty and nobility, as were white Americans of the era, many black aristocrats were experts in the genealogy and drew upon family trees whose roots and branches included the assortment of African princes, European royalty, Caucasian statesmen, Madagascan noblemen, and Indian chiefmen. Did you hear that? Basically, these people, regardless if they were connected to these people or not, it was important to them to interwoven their genealogy into people who they considered people of importance. Sound like white devils to me. Sound like mulatto white devils. Sound like house Negroes. Sound like elitist house Negroes to me. Raw and uncut, just like that. Okay? So, I just read to you from the book, Aristocrats of Color, South and North, the Black Elite from 1880 to 1920, end quote. So I'm done on that level. As I continue this podcast, okay, again, people, we have to learn to care about what we personify as a people. We have to care about our ancestors, our past. We have to dig up our ancestral past. We can't let white folks dig up our past because they interpret things not the same way we interpret things. They and not only that, they have different agendas. They don't have the same agenda that we got. We have to care about our culture and our history as a people. Those of us in America, I'm not talking about Africans in Africa. I'm not talking about Africans who moved over here from Africa. I'm talking about those who are like me, who have generation after generation after generation after generation after generation only in America. Not only to what they call the time of colonization in the 15th or 16th century that goes past that. Raw and uncut. Man, I was just talking to my father. Hey, Queen, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you going in and out, leaving a girl. Look, I want to share what something my father shared with me, and I was talking to my father on the phone. I want to share this with the indigenous community, anybody out there listening. I want to share this. How my father shared with me some information, what he was taught about my great-grandmother, who was Cherokee, okay? And how my great-grandmother would sleep sitting up with her legs crossed like an Indian. She would not lay down. She slept sitting up with her legs crossed. You feel me? And she slept in in her own room. She wouldn't share a room with my great grandfather. She slept in her own room, sitting up on her bed like an Indian. This is something she had did since she was a child. I mean, you shine some light on it, Queen, that I thought was actually a perspective I had not thought about why she did this. Go ahead and share why you say she probably did this.
Well, I said there's like one or two possibilities. One, that the history of the people she came from would constantly had to be moving a lot, and so to share space, they would sleep sitting up that way. Or two, if she was ever made guard or sentry, so she'd be awake enough to know what's going on, but still have time to rest.
Well, because white men was constantly invading indigenous people's lands, and so I can imagine the women, having to keep guard and stay woke for their children and for their families to be aware and to be alert. So, due to the fact that my great grandmother, coming from a time period of the 1800s, and I can understand. I mean, she slept sitting up with her legs folded like an Indian, and she looked like an Indian as well. So I don't want to go into looks. What an Indian look like, that's a whole nother story. Talking about what Indians look like. Everybody got different perspective, but all I would say is this: we ain't Africans, and we don't look like no Africans, and Africans look like Africans. And if anybody say, well, how about the Africans over there that look like us? There's some of them who look like us and we look like them. Well, a lot of people don't know about the thousands of indigenous American Indians that was taken out of America and shipped over to West Africa. That's something that nobody talks about. And I've talked about that in past podcasts. I'm going to have to reiterate that and do another podcast on it again, how most people don't realize that the slave trade was told to us in reverse. It was told to us in a lie, and it was told to us in the reverse, when in actuality, there were more Indians that were shipped out of America, sent over to Europe and Africa, than those that were ever brought here. And so that's why I say people like Bill Cosby, they perpetuate that lie because they don't rectify nothing. Bill Cosby did not rectify anything that the white man did. He was a conformist and a pacifist. He was a conformist and a pacifist. He did not care about culture. He cared about getting in where he can fit in. And before I get off the air, I want to play another excerpt of Good Times, giving an example of how the Bill Cosby show, somebody might say, well, there was a mother and a father living together in a home. Well, yes, there was a mother, so-called black man, a so-called black woman who were educated, living together. What is wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with an educated black man. My son is educated. There's nothing wrong with getting your education. But there's something wrong when you get your education and forget where you came from. There's something wrong when you get your education and don't care about where you came from. There's something wrong when you get your education and you don't care about who your grandparents and your parents are and where they came from. And you don't care about the values that they passed down to you and you just cut that off. That's something wrong with that. And that is Eurocentric assimilation at its finest. So let me play this and we shall return.
Michael, why don't you come over to my house? Michael, why don't you come over to my house and look at television?
I shall not play that. That's the wrong one. Let me play. Woo. I put the wrong one in. That's not the one I wanted to play. Oh, here it is. Right here. Let me play this right quick and we shall return.
James, the children are right. You did the wrong thing.
Now look, Florida, I'm running this house, and I'm not going to have our kids talking to me that way. Now, Junior, as long as you living under my roof, you ain't going to do but one thing, and that's obey.
Who says I got to live under your roof?
JJ!
Oh, what you trying to say, Junior?
I'm saying maybe I ought to leave.
Oh, son, it's rough out there. You'd be back home before your suitcase stopped rocking.
I could make it on my own. Toulouse-Lautrec was 18 when he left home. I'm a year younger, but I'm a lot taller.
JJ, I think you're letting this go too far.
No, Mama. Mr. Jackson says I could use his storage room. Maybe I'll take him up on that.
Junior, you mean to say you stayed with a man who betrayed your father?
Oh, Dad, that was 20 years ago. He's my patron now.
Well, son, and that's if you care about being my son. If you go anywhere near Leroy Jackson's house, you can forget about ever coming back here again.
James, who says I'm coming back?
JJ!
Well, you got your hat, get your coat.
James, please.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to pack. I'll help you.
JJ, don't leave. Hey, come on, JJ, don't do this.
I'm being asked to.
James, tell your son this is his house, too.
If he sets foot outside that door, it ain't his house no more.
JJ, you heard him, Mama. Goodbye, Mama. Goodbye, Michael. Goodbye, Thelma. Goodbye, almost everybody.
Again, that was Good Times back in the 70s. That was an episode that had to be around probably 73, 72, because by 74, they had killed the man off the show. But again, an example of a so-called black man being a father to his son and being a strong father figure to his son, you know. And, how would Bill handle something like that? Matter of fact, let me play this right here. I believe this is an excerpt from Bill Cosby. Let me see, make sure this is the right one. Then I want to put the wrong one in here. Let me play this right quick.
Mom, Dad, Justine and I talked it over and we decided we're not going to live together. It just wasn't the right time.
Oh, I'm so thankful that you've come to this conclusion.
Now, I know when I left here, it was under some strain, and I'm sure we all said some things that we're sorry about.
Not me.
Okay, well, I know I said some things that I'm sorry about. But I'm sure we're all big enough to forgive each other.
Not me.
Look, Mom, I'm not living with Justine.
Please don't sit on my sofa.
When are you going to get it, Theo? This is not just about living with Justine. It's about going behind our backs and doing something and then lying to our faces about what it is you're doing.
I'm sorry, Mom.
It was not too long ago, you stood right here, and you said something to the effect that we were controlling you with our money, and that if we thought that you were just going to do whatever, you and Justine are going to go on with your life. Now, did you happen to think ahead of time what would happen if we said, no, you can't come back here to live?
No, I didn't.
Of course you didn't. Because we're your safety net. You always do this. You go out into the world and you mess up. Why? You know we're sitting in this house waiting to take you back in. It's always been that way.
I know, Mom.
You come back into this house, you listen to the speech we give, just like the one your father just gave. You go right back out there in the world, you mess up, and you always get to come back into the house again. Well, honey, I'm sorry. I have had enough. I do not have the strength to give you the permission to come back into this house.
So you guys are saying I can't move back in?
I think you're getting close to what
You mean you're gonna send me out there without a home in the cold and the rain?
There you go right there. Now the question is, what is the difference between those two episodes other than the fact that you got one who was saying that he wanted to leave and you had one who was trying to come back home? The question is the response of the parents. Listen to how the parents dealt with the situation. You had a strong, when it came to JJ wanting to leave home, well, his father didn't want him to leave, but if he wanted to leave, he said go. You know, and he was going to go ask for help from somebody who did his father wrong. And his father told him, look, if you go see that man, then you know what, don't come back here. Because that man disrespected me and that man did me wrong. But if he wanted to leave, he said go. Well, in this situation, you got the Huxtables that are using their money and their finances as a balance weight to discipline their child. And you didn't hear, and you hear his mother saying that she was not going to forgive him. He said, somebody, talking about she didn't feel like she had to say sorry. She didn't feel like. No, actually, it was about forgiveness. She said, she didn't have to forgive him in so many words. Let me not quote her. Let me quote this. Let me play this again. I want to make sure I get this right about what his mother.
Not going to live together. Just wasn't the right time.
Oh, I'm so thankful that you've come to this conclusion.
Now, I know when I left here, it was under some strain, and I'm sure we all said some things that we're sorry about.
Not me.
Okay, well, I know I said some things that I'm sorry about. But I'm sure we're all big enough to forgive each other.
Not me.
Mom, I'm not.
There you go right there. Talking about she's not big enough to forgive. What time not teaching your child what forgiveness is? All mothers teach their children what forgiveness is. Well, the only people I know that don't know how to really forgive is white people. And they're the biggest hypocrites that talk about forgiveness. Unless they're a Christian, then all of a sudden they either hella compassionate or they still evil and use Jesus as a cover. But we got to wake up, people. We got to decolonize our minds. White folks are colonizing our minds and our lives. They've already colonized our country. They ain't going nowhere. But they don't have to colonize your mind. That's a choice that you have. Bill Cosby was contributing to cultural genocide. He was contributing to the colonizing of our minds, for us to live like white people, to act like white people, to deal with our children like white people, to work like white people, to behave like white people, and to make decisions and judgments based in our lives and the lives of our families like white people. But we're not white people, people. We're totally different. Why you think these people have to learn to be like us? Now if we don't pay attention to what's going on, we're gonna have to learn to be us again. Because it appears to me that's like they're switching, role reversing. They've done it with our indigenous history and our indigenous past, and they're doing it today, still role reversing. Now I'm not just talking about hip hop and culture and clothes, because when it comes to fad and fashion, everybody indulge in that. But these people literally act like, they want us to be African. They want us to forget about our indigenous roots and our indigenous heritage, our indigenous culture. And then they've taken our indigenous culture and made it theirs. You still got white people who are $5 Indians. And what's a $5 Indian? Anybody who got 5%, maybe a great-great-grandmother, one Indian in their family. Rest of the motherfuckers in their family white. And they want to claim they're Indian. Then you got those who paid $5 back in the 1930s and 1920s, $5 for an Indian identity so that they can take our land because the white man was giving land to white people. For $1 on an acre, they was practically giving it away to white folks just because they didn't want us having our own land. It's time for us to wake up, people. Queen, you got anything you want to say about so far that I played already?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
Yeah, you just pretty much listening. You just did not want. My whole point of you joining the show is to comment, girl. You just been listening to the show. I wanted you to comment on Bill Cosby here. But you know what? I enjoyed your time and your company. I also wanted to read from the article Blackness, Blackish, and the Cosby Show, how Cliff Huxtable changed American culture. The whole purpose of me reading this article is to point out how the Bill Cosby Show was a show that paved the way for more shows that do nothing but perpetuate the same ideology, which is Eurocentric ideology and the agenda of cultural genocide. Like the show Blackish. The show Blackish is nothing but another show where you got black people, so-called black folks, living in an upper middle class, predominantly all white community, and they're blending in with white society. Well, actually, white people ain't never tried to blend in with us other than take what they want to take and assimilate into their own mindset. But they want us to constantly blend in with them. That means we don't say the things they don't like. We don't act the way they don't want us to act. We don't dress the way they're not comfortable with. We don't behave in such a way that they consider uncomfortable for them. This is all about making them feeling comfortable in our homeland, our country. And for us to not to know that we're in our own homeland and our own country. People, it's time for us to wake up. So on that note, I got to go, people. It's time for me to head up out of here. I have more information I want to share, but I will continue that information for next week. I will do a part 3 on why Bill Cosby's rise and fall hurt Black America. I will do a part 3 next week. And next week, I'm going to talk about how Bill Cosby hates poor, uneducated Black people, or so-called Black people. He hates those who are so-called Black Americans who are uneducated and not living up to his so-called status quo. And so I'm going to prove that. I'm going to show, I got information I'm going to show on that Bill Cosby hates so-called poor Black Americans, but he's done nothing to aid or to help the progress of so-called poor Black America, to bring us out of the poverty. He's done nothing. Just like Oprah Winfrey has done nothing. Just like a lot of these so-called Black celebrities, they do nothing. They get in where they fit in. They do exactly what the white devil wants them to do. They compromise. They're conformist. They're pacifist. They do everything the white devil wants them to do. They dance and they entertain, speak and they talk like a good old Black elitist. And so I will continue this subject matter next week, dropping nothing but the raw and uncut. And on that note, I gotta go. Queen, you want to give some last words before we head up out of here?
Well, this is as usual. It's what I usually say when I get off the show with you. Just stay united, stay one, and educate yourself.
Well, and on that note, I concur, people. We got to stay united. And the only way we're going to stay united is for us to wake up. The only way we're going to stay united, actually right now, we're not even united. We're broken. We're like a broken puzzle, people. But we got to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And we can't make pieces of a puzzle fit. We got to put them where they belong. We got to put the pieces where they belong for the picture to come together. And that means that we have to be a people, in my opinion, what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to convey is that we have to be a people of integrity. We have to be a people of truth. We have to be a people of love. To be a people of integrity and truth and love, that means you care about the truth. Not what you make the truth, not what you've been and want to be the truth, but the raw and uncut truth. And so, people, that's what we got to do. And so on that note, I got to get out of here. I will definitely be back next Indigenous Sunday. And you can always chime in and join me toll free. Don't cost you a dime. Just a bit of your conscious time to chime in and join me here at the Conscious Table of Truth on the Black Village every Indigenous Sunday from 3 to 4 Pacific Standard Time. That number is 857-232-0155 and conference code 947595. So on that note, people, as I always say, may the great mother bring us together under the wings of her peace, her love, and her joy. And as always, I love chicken. So, love, peace, and chicken grease.
No matter where you go in every country, we in there. Most of us did not come on slave ships, we've been here. Indian just means amalgamated more. The U.S. tried to wipe us out in 3 Seminole wars. For each Aboriginal, 7 troops died. 90% of Indians were reclassified as Negroes. We fought European foes. Africa's great, but we don't look under our nose. Or now here's the Old Man River, or the Massey Sequel, knock out the Mississippi. We're the Yamasee people and others here like the Washita, the Chocos in Colombia, Darientos in Panama, the Garifunas and more. We're prisoners of war. Our titles, nationalities, and birthrights ignored. We got a huge missing gap in our past and been divided into race of some type of caste. Everyone else has a language, where's mine? Cause ours is long gone like your grandpa's hairline.